So ANC KwaZulu-Natal Chairperson Siboniso Duma has defended his actions at an event commemorating 110 years since the passing of King Dinuzulu kaCetshwayo. He grabbed the microphone from AmaZulu traditional Prime Minister Ntuli, accusing him of hijacking Saturday's event. Duma maintained that decisive action had to be taken.
To you that he was not part and parcel of the program. He took a program without anyone giving him a space, because I've called Inyosi Officilo, Inyosi Mdleje. He then stood up, went and presented his speech. So I would want us to dwell at that situation. Unfortunately for you, I thought you'll understand that the presentation, the president has already spoken, the first citizen of the country. So, as you must understand the process, so the president and Isilo was a keynote address because Isilo Sasosudu is his great-grandfather. So, he had to be given that platform. So, no one in the government platform was supposed to grandstand, was supposed to act and as an activist of an organization. He was not supposed to talk about even Provincial Secretary Ntuli, who was not part and parcel. Ntuli was not in that event. And unfortunately, he wrote something in the government event which was not correct, which is something that had to be dealt with in the process.
And meanwhile, Duma says the party is investigating the violence that took place after the commemoration event. It's alleged that members of the Inkatha Freedom Party assaulted about 10 ANC supporters.
We had those news, which was very bad for us because we condemn the violence taking place in the province of Kwazulu-Natal with the strongest hand. We've just delegated the leadership of the region led by Comrade Hlengwa just to go. Yesterday, there were 10 comrades who were badly injured. They were taken to hospital and some have already been discharged. We are busy with the investigation because we want the law enforcement agents to be thorough on this investigation, because our comrades were deadly beaten by the IFP crew who were there, and fortunately enough, there were some police who were around and the leadership was still present at that particular function.
Well, at the same time, the IFP has denied the allegations, saying that they are baseless. The party's national spokesperson, Mkhuleko Hlengwa, says accusing its members of acts of violence without any proof is clear provocation. The party has further accused Duma of disrespecting the Zulu monarch and nation. They say he is single-handedly responsible for fomenting violence and is on a disastrous path. The IFP says it condemns all forms of violence and welcomes any police investigation into the incident. All right, so for more on this discussion, we are now joined via Zoom by Mr. Thami Ntuli, who is, of course, Salga's KZN Chairperson. Mr. Ntuli, good morning to you. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I want to start with this before we even get into our discussion. Just a quick reminder of what we actually saw playing out on stage and your view of what it is that we saw. But let's quickly take a look at this, Mr. Ntuli.
A senior leader of the ANC in this province, Mr. Ntuli, who is in fact the...
Besicela ukuthi sihloniphe usiku esekona ngishaya ngicela uhlale phansi besitanzothula isilo uyawulimaza umcimbi omuhle kangaka wesilo sasoSuthu. You are becoming clumsy, and esizathu esenza ukuthi sihloniphane ukuthi okade phambili ngaphambi kwakho beyihlonipha into ya government.
Yeah. That is the event that we saw playing out this weekend. And Mr. Thami Ntuli, we speak to you in your capacity as Salga KZN Chairperson, and I'm wondering if you're able to be non-partisan as you look at what we saw unfolding. I mean, looking at that particular incident unfolding on stage, what do you make of that? Who was in the wrong?
Well, thank you and good morning to yourself and to the viewers. First and foremost, one must start by condemning any act of violence and any act of intimidation. We have been calling for peace and calm here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal and Salga, in particular owing to the killings of the political leaders, traditional leaders, and even the members of the community at large. Hoping that our call will be respected even as we prepare for the elections. It's unfortunate what we saw. In our view, we believe that the program director in that traditional ceremony had an opportunity to respond or correct whatever was not according to his expectation. After the traditional prime minister had presented what he was about to present. It's a gesture. In fact, we have been condemning as Salga that how we behave as leaders and what we say as leaders is important, especially during this time as we prepare for the elections. You'll be aware that KwaZulu-Natal has been, in fact, I marked as one of the provinces where everyone in terms of the political spectrum is seeing it as very likely to deliver them to national or even to the provincial legislature. So in that case, it's important that whatever is happening, not only in KwaZulu-Natal, but especially here in KwaZulu-Natal, the leaders, they respect that and they understand that there should not be a cause for any act of violence. In fact, we should be joining hands in calling for unity, in calling for peace, so that when we have the elections in the province in KwaZulu-Natal, they will remain peaceful. There will be only a democratic process that will deliver a new government for the new term, which will take the lives of the people of KwaZulu-Natal forward.
Right. Let me ask you this, and I think this is where the tension might very well continue to be an issue if we aren't able to clarify this. And you speak to us as Salga, but we've also seen the traditional Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation, Buthelezi, essentially coming out and saying that Duma's conduct showed a dismal lack of respect for the King and the President. Where do we then start to prioritize protocol in a province like KwaZulu-Natal, where the AmaZulu nation is such a massive part of the community and the way that people see themselves and their identity and how we square that up with government structures? One can't deny, of course, that the very term traditional Prime Minister of the Zulu nation is not something that formally is recognized by government. So which protocol do we prioritize at events such as these in KZN?
Well, I would not, in fact, support the view that the position of the traditional Prime Minister of the Zulu Nation and monarch is in fact, is something that should not be recognized by government. Because if you recognize the King of the Zulu Nation, you recognize his decisions, you will heed his call, you will support his call. When he appoints the traditional minister of the Zulu Nation and monarch, I believe when you live under, in fact, the respect of the king, you will recognize the traditional prime minister. To say there may be anyone who may not recognize the traditional prime minister, whether being in government or being in private sector or wherever, that will be a disrespect to, in fact, the decisions of the king, because the traditional prime minister is actually appointed by the king himself. Hence, I'm of the view that our leaders, they need not to, in fact, have political views on issues which are of the kingdom, on issues which are of the traditional leadership or the institute of the traditional leadership.
All right, and I know that this is difficult for you to do because I need to speak to you as a Salga chairperson, and then I need to switch gears here and speak to you as IFP provincial chair, and then speak to your views from a political party point of view. I mean, your concerns around threats of violence in the province, particularly where we're starting to see over the weekend violence erupting between what now people are saying, allegedly, IFP and ANC supporters. A statement now having been released by the IFP saying essentially that Duma is unhinged and a bully of epic proportions, drunk on his ego, and is clearly hell-bent on an elusive dream to become premier. Your concern about those tensions moving forward, and how is it that the IFP and ANC are able to go into this election without stoking violence that we know historically has been a big problem between the two parties, particularly in the run-up to a massive election?
We have held many elections. You know, there was a period of violence in the province of Kwazulu-Natal, but our leaders were able to negotiate for reconciliation, and indeed, after that, we have had a number of elections without any violence. And we have had leaders of the other political parties, including the IFP and the ANC, who have been tolerant, who have been peaceful in their behavior and in their actions. I think it's important to maintain that because, you see, on a political point of view, leaders, when they are given platforms, they do make their, in fact, impressions on certain issues or on certain leaders, including any leader, even the leaders of the ANC, when they are the MECs, to be more specific, using the government platform to give their impressions on leaders, either of the IFP, including myself.
Right.
But I don't think that must amount to, in fact, a conflict which will result to violence. It's important that we all get matured and we correct whatever we feel is not true when we have a platform, but we do not engage physically. And I'm encouraging leaders really to understand that you need not to cost the community. We need not to be the source of any violence that will put the lives of the ordinary citizens at danger. That will mean we're failing to be leaders enough if our behavior, our actions are a source of what we don't want to see, unless if we are in admission that we really do not understand what it calls to be a leader. Because when you're a leader, you keep low your emotions, even circumstances when you feel that what you hear is not according to your expectations. You behave as a leader, because it's important that we unite the people of KwaZulu-Natal for one purpose, for one goal, which is to fix the problems that they are faced with of unemployment, of crime, of the collapsing economy, not to cause tensions which are unnecessary. It's important that everyone, even the ordinary citizen of the province living in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, must know that at no stage violence will be a solution during this period.
Right.
And I agree with Mkhuleko Hlengwa that it's unfortunate that the ANC, in particular Mr. Duma, is now saying they were their members were attacked by the IFP. It wasn't an IFP function. They did not see people wearing IFP regalia. Even to make such a statement is now raising tensions between the ANC and the IFP, which is not supposed to be the case.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but we really do appreciate the chat. That was, of course, Thami Ntuli, Salga's KZN chairperson, speaking to us there.